Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Switch Statement Podcast. It's a podcast for investigations into miscellaneous tech topics.
This is our 13th episode on Masters of Doom by David Kushner.
Hey, John, how are you doing?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I am doing all right. Ready to get into some death matching.
Yeah, man.
Do you play a lot of online video games?
I used to be obsessed with Counter-Strike. That was really my first... I played Quake, actually. I remember playing Quake in Mr. Crimebring's class. It was my English teacher. He had like three computers.
Crimebring?
Crimebring. Yeah. Great name. Great teacher. I really like that guy. But he would let us use his computers during lunch, and I came with a couple of friends, and we played Quake. It was amazing.
Dude, I feel like that name should be illegal. It irritates me in a way that it's hard to quantify.
Yeah, it's like you bringing crying? What's going on?
Like, what are you bringing? Like, where are you going with that crying?
He's going to be really mad. I'm talking about him if he listens to this podcast, which he certainly does not.
Friend of the pod, Mr. Crimebring. No,
Crimebring, if you're listening, you were great. You're a great teacher.
Nice. Well, actually, Counter-Strike, that was from Valve, right?
Yeah, Counter-Strike actually has an interesting story. It started as a mod to Half-Life. And I think it was... I might be wrong about this. I feel like I'm always making stuff up on this podcast. I got to check myself. But I think it was a community mod to Half-Life. That's how it started.
Yeah. No, I think you're right about that. I'm not super up on Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike does kind of hold this unique place in online gaming. It seemed like a cult almost, like that has been going on since it started.
To me, like, and this, just to bring it back to the chapter, like they talk about how Quake was sort of the origin of real kind of esport style deathmatch, where it was getting popular. Like there was Rockstar. I shouldn't use the term Rockstar, that confuses with Romero, but there was like these hero players, who had their own name and their own crazy identity. They talk about Thresh a little bit. But for me, Counter-Strike was the first game that like truly like took that to the next level. Like I remember following Counter-Strike teams, seeing like where they would go. And I think actually some of these Quake people ended up like playing Counter-Strike and being also very good at Counter-Strike.
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of which, one thing I had in my notes was this player they talk about called Stevie Case.
Yeah.
The rare female Quake player. And this is one thing that's interesting is I think is this the first female character, aside from like Mothers, like, yeah, I think this might be the first female character or it might even be like the only named female character thus far.
Yeah. No, this book is embarrassingly masculine. Or actually, I don't even know if masculine is the right word because not everything they do strikes me as masculine.
Right. So she is a very interesting person, and I just read a little bit into her backstory. This is like a complete tangent. It didn't talk about this in the book at all, but she was actually involved in a lawsuit she like participated in a lawsuit against her school district because they banned this book, Annie on My Mind.
Annie on My Mind?
The name of it is not it doesn't really describe anything about the book at all, but it's this book about a lesbian couple, two young lesbian women and their relationship, and it's a happy ending. And this was anathema to the very conservative school district that she grew up in. Wow. And so they fought this like protracted legal argument over like the fact that the justification for banning the book was just because the school district like didn't really like the viewpoint espoused in it.
Wow. We have come a long way as a society. And I think it also goes to show that there's an element of gaming culture that has always been very progressive. Like there's obviously sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about this. I was like, no, nobody cared. It's like she was good, so like, and you know, she probably faced sexism, but like at the end of the day, like the game's the game, and you know, you can't argue with results. And she sounded like she was a baller in terms of deathmatch. So
total baller, yeah, total baller. And she'll come up again. They mention her later. It might have been in the next chapter, but she actually worked with Romero, which is kind of cool.
Right, and then the last point is her father's name was Steve, which I feel like that's just wrong.
Steve and Stevie.
Steve and Stevie. All right, but yeah, that's all my aside about Stevie Case.
That's pretty sweet. So yeah, Quake really hit the big time. You know that you've hit the big time when Robin Williams is praising your game on David Letterman. They mention this. I need to find the video because how does Robin Williams praise Quake? Like I'm sure it was hilarious and awesome.
That is hilarious. Yeah, I feel like, you know, it's just one sentence. I just like skimmed over that, I guess. But
that just stuck out to me. So they mention Quake sort of not being as big of a commercial success as Doom 2, partially because of some distribution issues. We talked last time about GTI and how they were kind of like doing some shenanigans to GTI to try to like circumvent them to basically release the game shareware and then give like an unlock code, which would, you know, basically the idea is you're like avoiding a bunch of distribution fees. But it didn't work. Didn't really work.
It just went back to bite them right in the ass. Like they tried to fuck GTI over. And the other thing that's so funny is like GTI is just like sitting there like, what did we do? And then GTI is like, listen, we have a bunch of other businesses. You guys have been like a major pain in our ass. So like, good riddance.
I mean, when you got Gloria Estefan in your, you know, in your like group, you're not going to care about a bunch of nerds like crying about distribution fees.
I mean, that's a really important thing for us to remember for THKP. Like, I wonder if we can get Gloria Estefan to come work for THKP.
I mean, that would be my every dream coming true if we could get someone like Gloria Estefan to even associate with us. That would be amazing.
Well, and I actually, you know, at the risk of like just wildly speculating, the plan to screw over GTI, wasn't that a Mike Wilson plan?
I do not remember, but that would make sense because he was the guy that was all big on distribution, right?
I should check this, but like he became this guy, Mike Wilson. I don't even think we talked about him in the last episode, but he becomes like a much bigger player in this episode, and because he's with he goes with Romero,
right.
And actually this is what we see kind of at the beginning of this chapter. I mean, I think when we left it off, it was the acrimonious divorce of Carmack and Romero, and so we see kind of a bunch of the like heart and soul of id go with Romero, because I guess, I don't know, Romero was kind of the soul of the company. And it sounded like everything was very rigid and strict and puritanical. Not puritanical, but like just...
Yeah, like regimented. Not as kind of freewheeling and fun. Which, I do think that they really complemented each other.
Yeah.
And it is one of the great tragedies in the gaming industry that they had this massive falling out because... And we'll talk about this, but they did continue to make games, but because they were lacking that sort of like other half, I think their games suffered. And some of them were very successful, which we'll discuss. But at least from my point of view, even at the time as a kid growing up, I just felt like their games were sort of missing something.
Yeah. Although that said, I mean, it did sound like Quake 2. So Quake 2 is the first game that they came out with after Romero left, right?
Yeah. And Quake 2 was a huge success.
I mean, it sounds like they were able to pull off a story. You know what I mean? Like, they were able to apply this very, like, common sense approach to adding a story, especially I guess if things aren't like this messy clusterfuck like the original Quake was, and you can just approach it head on from the beginning and stick with that plan. Like you don't need this like sprawling, like super creative narrative, and they were able to come out with a game that actually was better narratively than when they had these like I guess ostensibly more creative designers.
Yeah, they mentioned how they based the game off of the Guns of the Navarone, which I had never realized. Famous Gregory Peck film. Also famous quote from Pulp Fiction, where have you ever seen Pulp Fiction?
I have, yeah, but I don't know that I would be able to recall random quotes, but yeah, go for it.
Whenever I hear Guns of the Navarone, I just think of when Samuel Jackson is like cleaning up brain matter from
God.
the car, and he's just really, really upset. And he's going on this rant, and he talks about how he's the Guns of the Navarone because he's so upset.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Anyway, I just found that hilarious. Made me think of it. But yeah, the one thing I would say about Quake 2, like it's an amazing game. It was certainly a tremendous technical feat at the time. Like everything Carmack touched, it just he couldn't not like make a tremendous technical achievement. But the game did lack a certain kind of gritty character, just weird, bizarre element that Quake 1 had. And I don't know, maybe this is just me kind of knowing the story and kind of applying my knowledge of the outside story to the game. But it always struck me that Quake 2 was missing something, just that like weird kind of creative extra piece that I think Romero was bringing. It's this brilliant, polished experience, but it was missing something.
I never played. I had the Quake 2 demo, so I never really got the full. So I just played through that like one level. But yeah, and I think there is this tendency to like have it be this like poetic story where it's like in order for the story to work, Quake 2 kind of has to be soulless. And then like Daikatana, which I guess we'll see more about what happens with Daikatana. Daikatana is fully fulfilling its half of this narrative split.
Yes.
I would argue. But
couple of things I don't want to whiz by. I just found these hilarious. So they mentioned the Voodoo 3D card.
Yeah.
So there was this era, and I guess we're kind of still in the era where like new graphics card releases are like these huge events in sort of the the gaming world or like the young people world. And I remember the Voodoo 3D card releasing and this whole 3D accelerated business, which Quake 2 makes full use of, kind of famously. And so I just wanted to mention that. Another thing I wanted to throw out was Romero's terms in leaving id. I thought this was interesting because he basically got fully bought out.
Yeah.
It sounds like id, and this also happened with that other guy, I want to say Tom, where they did not want any of these people to retain any ownership stake in id, which, I think kind of makes sense just from a strategic standpoint. You don't want this rando equity stake, but it also is just brutal.
So Tom got bought out for his stake, I guess, when he left.
I don't think
they didn't talk about that.
They did not talk about that. It almost, in fact, the way it was portrayed in the book, it almost seemed like he just didn't get anything.
Which I'm not sure that would be legal. Like if you own a portion of a company, can they just take that away from you?
It seems wrong, and I hope it's illegal.
I guess, I don't know. Like this is the thing. All of like company ownership and shares, it's all fake. You know what I mean? So it's like you can just kind of, I think you could just make up whatever system you want, basically, in your organizing document or whatever it is or your. I'm not sure what the term is, but like
your like charter or whatever.
The charter, the company charter,
yeah. So I think he got bought out for $10 million, which ton of money. Nothing to shake a stick at, but I do think that id sort of went on to be worth a lot more than that.
No, if he had not been bought out, he would be many times over, like, more wealthy than that. But
Yeah.
so Romero quickly goes to create his new like Wonderland office. It sounds awesome. I mean, it does sound like this incredible. He buys this, or like starts renting this penthouse, this like enormous space with panoramic views, and like Romero, they're basically like, yeah, it's really hard to air condition. Everything is in direct sunlight, and it costs like $1 million a month to rent. And Romero's like, whatever, it's cool. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make the decision that optimizes for maximum coolness. Like that, it feels like that's kind of Romero's way.
Yeah, it's him in a nutshell. This chapter and the next one do a really good job of, and I don't know if they're caricaturizing Romero and Carmack, but just like the extreme diametrically opposedness of their two sort of ways of doing things, like approach to software, approach to like hiring, and approach to running an organization. Because Carmack, after Romero leaves, he kind of like simplifies id. He runs the show with only, I want to say 9 employees.
Yeah.
Only 3 of whom were programmers, I think.
Yeah.
And here's Romero, just like you're saying, going off, teaming up with some, huge publisher with this crazy deal. I think the deal was like $3 million per title plus 40% of royalties, which is just this like, that would be like you're a rock star in the gaming industry. That's the only way you could make a deal like that. And he hires 100 people.
Yeah.
So anyway, it just was interesting how the two guys just went in completely different directions.
And so they start working with this company called Eidos, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. Eidos is kind of depicted as this almost faceless company that's just like siphoning money into them. They talk. I guess Eidos produced Tomb Raider. I think they had said that.
That part was hilarious because the author David Kushner like described Tomb Raider.
I didn't know if that was like tongue in cheek.
I feel either that or this book was published at a time where Tomb Raider just wasn't. Because I feel like anyone knows what Tomb Raider is, right?
Well, right. I mean, Tomb Raider is like, it's on a level with Quake and Doom. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, yeah, that's just funny.
But anyway, I completely interrupted your train of thought. So.
Oh, no. But anyway, but we just see them as these kind of faceless funders. Their origin story is never like really tapped into. Like, where do they have so much money to just plumb into this fledgling video game company? That's never really addressed.
And man, did they put money into Ion Storm.
Yeah, that's right. I guess we didn't even say that the Romero's company is called Ion Storm.
They talk about a couple new characters. Like this book does a very good job of having like just throwaway sentences, kind of like Robin Williams endorsing Quake on David Letterman, where it's like the author will just say something and then just not explain it at all.
Yeah.
And they mentioned this guy Brian Iserloh, and they talk about how he was famous for nude Doom hacking parties. And they did not talk about what that meant. It's like, what is a nude Doom hacking party?
I mean, I feel like that's kind of a face value thing.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's, I guess they were just working on some plods.
So it's funny because throughout this chapter, they kind of build up this feud that's happening between the scorned Romero and Carmack's id. There's this escalating like tit for tat where it's almost like there's like low key corporate espionage where one time the people people from id are visit Romero's office, and then like this one of id's employees sees that like one of the artists is using like an old program, and then he writes this like, I guess, scathing .plan file calling out the just their company for being like out of touch and like behind the times, I guess. And actually, this is something I don't know that we touched on this the dot plan files. Oh, sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah. I was just gonna say I think that was Paul Steed, who was another character that was introduced in this chapter. I think he was a designer on id, and the way they introduced Paul Steed is he was at this inflection point in his life where he realized he could either stay up all night working on programming or he could stay up all night hanging out with girls.
Yes.
And he chose girls. So he wound up being just a paltry designer, I guess.
Right,
anyway,
exactly.
I just find it hilarious how David Kushner like introduces these characters.
Yeah. So there's this growing feud between them, but then you see this interaction between Romero and id, when Romero first sees Quake 2, and he still retains this like admiration for what Carmack is doing. He's working on his own stuff, and he's still like he wants to win, but like he almost can't fight the appreciation that he has for the tech that Carmack is churning out. And as much as Kushner pitches them as being in this death match, literally, the relationship is much more nuanced than that, I think. And we get senses for this when it's like, people from id are visiting the Ion Storm offices, and Romero is just like showing up randomly at the id offices. I don't think Kushner is making a point of it, because I think it kind of undercuts the larger narrative point that they're feuding. But like it speaks to that there was more cross-pollination between the companies after they split than you would imagine, I guess.
Yeah. No, it is interesting because their little plan wars is getting more and more acrimonious. But there are these brief moments, like they talk about E3. Was that this chapter, or am I jumping the gun?
I think that this, I think this was this chapter where Romero sees it at E3.
Exactly. So, and just like what you're saying, I mean, they showed Quake 2 and Daikatana at E3, and Quake 2 just blew Daikatana out of the water. Like it wasn't there was just no contest. And Romero sort of publicly said like he thought the tech for Quake 2 was the coolest thing he'd ever seen. Quake 2 had these like colored lights, which it's very funny to think of that as like groundbreaking tech, but I guess at the time it was. And, it was just a beautiful game.
And again, I think Romero had this preternatural ability to kind of see a piece of tech and see it for what it could be used to do as a designer. And that's why, you might just see like, oh, that light's yellow. But he's like, wait, no, this would allow you to make these very atmospheric levels, in a way that wasn't possible before.
Yes. Yeah. Which is, I think, why they worked so well together. There was another E3 moment that they mentioned where they had a death match, I guess, like towards the very end of this chapter. And of course, Romero just obliterated Carmack. I think it's no secret that Romero was just way better at games than Carmack was. But, it was kind of a beautiful moment.
Yeah. I think, I don't think I had anything else. Is there any other points that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, there's just two more things. I feel like we can't let this chapter go without mentioning the horrible ad that Romero put out for Daikatana, which is just in such poor taste. It's not even funny. I almost don't even want to like, you know what? People should just look it up. Suffice it to say, Romero and his team decided to put an ad out. They thought it was funny, and it's just terrible. Like if you see it today, it's just like disgusting. But moving on, another cool moment. So this chapter sort of opened up talking about Stephen Case, like you mentioned, and this other guy named Thresh, who were both these like semi-famous esporters. And at the E3 event, Carmack did this thing where he gave his first Ferrari to the winner of a Quake Deathmatch tournament. And the winner of that tournament was Thresh. And he gave him the Ferrari, and he was like, how are you going to get this Ferrari home? Because I guess Thresh lived across the country or something. And Thresh was like, well, I guess I'll have to ship it. And so Carmack just pulled a wad of $5,000 out of his pocket and just gave it to Thresh, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, and this goes back to like Carmack has like a really complex character where you could see like in that moment the rationality of it is like I am giving this person a gift. If they have to ship it home, like this is going to be a financial burden to them, which it directly contradicts like the point of the. So it's like, yeah, I'm just going to give this person $5,000 right now, and it's like,
Yeah.
it didn't matter at all to him, the money, I'm sure. So,
Right.
So yeah, and like that's why it feels so weird. Where it's like, okay, you have someone who both is like could morally justify stealing a computer, but then also would just like give some rando $5,000.
Yeah. He has his own system of honor, and he always adheres to it.
Yeah, that's what I want to be like.
Yeah. He's like Ned Stark from Game of Thrones.
Yes. Yeah. No, that is. And look what happened to Ned Stark.
Yep.
All right, no spoilers though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that about wraps it up for chapter 3 of Masters of Doom.
Yes, chapter 13.
What did I say?
said,
3?
I think you said 3. But
3,
yeah,
13.
I think same thing.
Same thing.
But yeah, as always, it was a pleasure, Matt.
It was a pleasure, and I will see you next time for chapter 4.
See you next time.